Meeting with Commissioner Roger Goodell. To kneel or not to kneel while the national anthem plays, what will the NFL say? It's coming up. We'll bring it to you live. I'm Harris. Here's Dana.
This is a Fox News Alert. We're keeping an eye on multiple major stories breaking this hour. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell set to hold a news conference in moments. It comes amid the controversy surrounding player protests during the national anthem and follows 2 days of meetings between league officials and players, as well as team owners. Goodell said yesterday that the league did not ask players to commit to stand during the national anthem, a move President Trump called, quote, a total disrespect for our country. We'll take you there as soon as it starts. Meanwhile, in Washington, we are waiting for the White House press briefing to start. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, he's also testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee in a hearing that's already had its share of highlights, including a very testy exchange with Senator Al Franken about Russia and multiple questions about what he knew about the firing of FBI Director James Comey. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is at Capitol Hill this morning at the hearing. And Catherine, it feels like this hearing actually could have been held several months ago. It's like the same topics.
Well, there are several questions that focused on the Russia case, Dana, as well as the firing of FBI Director James Comey. And it was clear right out of the gate from the committee's leadership that they wanted answers from Sessions and what he knew about the president's decision.
The American people have a right to know why he was fired, especially in the middle of so many high-profile issues going on, including the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election.
It's important, I believe, to understand what role you had in this process, including conversations with the president and others in the White House.
The Attorney General and his deputy, Rod Rosenstein, both drafted recommendations about Comey in early May for the president, and they focused on his handling and what they believe to be significant errors that he made in the Clinton email investigation. But as you recall, the president then told NBC News that it was really about the Russia case, his decision to fire Comey. Listen to Senator Feinstein.
Did the president ever mention to you his concern about lifting the cloud on the Russia investigation?
Senator Feinstein, that calls for a communication that I've had with the president, and I believe it remains confidential.
But you don't deny that there was a communication?
I do not confirm or deny the existence of any communication between the president that I consider to be confidential.
The Attorney General also took several questions from Democrats about the contacts that he had with the Russians during 2016. Senator Leahy at one point said that he felt Sessions had misled the committee about those contacts, but the Attorney General said that casual conversations or meeting with the Russian ambassador on the sidelines of an event, a campaign event, really did not amount to coordination or some level of collusion.
Catherine Herridge, thank you so much. We have NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell taking the podium now, so let's listen in.
Okay, good afternoon. Before I get to your questions, I'm pleased to announce that Dallas will be the host of the 2018 NFL Draft. I think you've got a release on that. This is the first time that we will be hosting the draft at a stadium complex. We're excited about that. I want to take a moment and just thank both Chicago and Philadelphia for really doing an extraordinary job to raise the bar. They have set a new standard for the draft, created a new experience for our fans that we think will be extraordinary. And we are confident that Dallas will raise that bar even further. So I'm happy to introduce Charlotte Jones Anderson, who is going to give her view of what to expect in Dallas. Again, the ownership was very supportive, and we're all very excited to be going to Dallas next April for the draft. Charlotte.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you. Well, on behalf of the Dallas Cowboys, the city of Dallas, the city of Arlington, and the city of Frisco, we are so excited that the NFL has given us this opportunity to host the draft in April of next year. And we have had so many great civic leaders in Dallas and across from Arlington and beyond that have really done a lot of hard work here, hopefully giving a lot of ideas to the staff at the NFL, to Peter and his team. And we really think we have come up with an incredible idea and concept that will really make AT&T Stadium shine, but also will deliver a unique experience that is unlike anything that you have seen thus far at the NFL draft. But I think this is what the draft process is all about. It allows the cities to show their unique personality and hopefully invite not only fans from all over our region in Dallas and the Metroplex and beyond, but from those from out of state, and that we welcome them to come to Dallas, to come to Arlington, to AT&T Stadium, to show their fandom and be a part of the draft in April. So you'll see a little bit different variation of it when you get there. A lot of those surprises are in store and will be released throughout the next few months. But again, we'd like to thank all of those who worked hard on this, but most importantly, the NFL for giving Dallas and the city of Arlington and AT&T Stadium the opportunity to host the draft. Thank you.
Any questions for Sean before she goes? I'm sure she doesn't want to stay for the rest of the show.
It's all you.
Okay, I'm sure you know. Okay, so we had a very productive set of meetings in New York here over the last couple of days. We had reports from various committees, including the competition committee. Very excited about the season that we have ongoing right now. We reviewed the 6 weeks that we've played to date and the margin of victory. We talked about the penalties per game. We talked about our game presentation and the changes that we've made and how that's worked. Talked about the focus on officiating. All very positive very positive feedback on the game. We also spent a great deal of time talking about our partnerships. We extended a partnership and expanded a partnership with Ticketmaster that we think will be very fan-friendly, that will give our fans a better opportunity to buy tickets on a secure basis and give that to them on greater platforms, which you think will be very positive in our initiatives there and the impact that that's having on our game. Lastly, we had a special visitor today. We had the commissioner of the NYPD, Jimmy O'Neill, and his chief of police, Terry Monahan. We have been, and I specifically have had conversations with them for several months. So this has been quite a while in the making to try to understand how we can continue to expand the relationships between our clubs, our players, our communities, and the NFL. And he was very helpful in giving us insight into what their initiatives are here with the NYPD, initiatives that are going on in other parts of the country, of which I saw firsthand down in Miami as an example last week and saw in Philadelphia recently. The relationship between the players and our communities and our law enforcement is very important to us. So that was very helpful. And yesterday, as you know, I made a brief comment about and came down to see you. I'm sure there'll be more questions about our meeting with the players and owners yesterday. We also spent a great deal of time with our owners alone today, discussing our efforts with our players. I would tell you that there's a great deal of support for the efforts that our players have identified. Not only support, but a recognition these are important issues for our communities. They're American issues and certain things that we really want to, as clubs and as the league, want to not only support but also be a part of and try to help lead with our players. I think those are the key issues. I would tell you, though, just on one other issue that we spent a great deal of time talking about this morning was how much we believe everyone should stand for the national anthem. That's an important part of our policy. It's also an important part of our game that we all take great pride in. And it's also important for us to honor our flag and to our country. And we think our fans expect us to do that. And so that is something that we continue to focus on this morning, but really talking a lot about the opportunity that exists with our players to try to go and really make a difference in our communities in a positive way. So I'll let you take questions.
To your statement yesterday, the president this morning tweeted that both you and the league have disrespect for the country. Is he wrong about that? And if so, why?
Well, as I just said, we respect our country, respect our flag, we respect our national anthem. I think you look at our clubs and what they do on a daily basis. You think we look at our players and what they do and how they participate in that. We all feel very strongly about our country and our pride, and we're going to continue to do that.
How can you allow the president to bully the National Football League when in January 8, 2015, on May 11, he himself expressed support for flag burning? So it doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
listen, I understand we're focusing on what we can do and what we should be doing as an NFL. I think we have a great opportunity here with our players to really work together and to try to help and make differences in our community. Things that we all believe are necessary to do, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
In the game operations manual, the players should be on the field for the national anthem, should stand at attention, hold their helmets in their hands. It's not a rule, but it's in the policy, so why not make it a rule? Since fans seem to want it, ratings seem to be down for the protest. Why not make it a rule?
Well, I think one of the things we need to keep a focus on is, again, we believe that our players should stand for the national anthem. That's an important part of our game and our moments, and we believe in that. I think we also have to keep focus on this. We have about 6 or 7 players that are involved with this protest at this point. And this is something that what we try to do is deal with the underlying issue and understand what it is that they're protesting and try to address that matter. And so let me finish, if you can. So the important thing for us is to be able to do that and take that opportunity to make real differences in our community. And that is really what's going to ultimately be the important aspect for us long term, because this is a long-term issue. We need to make sure we do that in the right way.
Would you agree that the image is suffering?
I understand where our fans feel about this issue, and we feel the same way about the importance of our flag, about the importance of patriotism, and I believe our players feel that way. They will state to you, and they have stated to everyone publicly, they are not doing this in any way to be disrespectful to the flag, but they also understand how it's being interpreted, and that's why we're trying to deal with those underlying issues.
Thank you, Roger. Discipline a player for taking a knee. What response will we see from the league if that were to happen?
Well, Jim, we just had 2 days of conversations with our owners, of which, this was a fair amount of the conversation. And I think our clubs all see this the same way, that we want our players to stand. We're going to continue to encourage them to stand, and we're going to continue to work on these issues in the community. We'll address issues. I can't deal with hypotheticals right now. We'll deal with those issues if they come up. But for us right now, that's our focus.
Mark Maskey. Roger, over here.
Yeah,
at this point, what have your sponsors and the network said to you about this issue, and what do you feel the effect is on your business right now of this entire?
Yeah, Mark, we had a report on that too. Listen, we know how important this is to our sponsors, our partners, our licensees. It's important to us also. So we all share that, and we certainly are in great contact with them. We understand the issues. We want to make sure they understand our perspective of what we're doing. And in fact, if they can help us, we want them to help us in those issues. But all of this is part of the ongoing effort and understanding one another and making sure that we do the right thing in our communities and the right thing to support our players, but also do the right thing to make sure we get back to football. And in the meantime, people understand how important our country is and how important it is to make sure that we're doing things the right way to honor our country.
Roger, Byron Barnett from WHDH in Boston. What is your reaction to the lawsuit filed against the NFL by the Aaron Hernandez family and their allegation that the NFL doesn't inform the players about the risks of CTE?
Listen, this is a matter of litigation, so that's something that's going to work its way through the litigation. I think there's been a great deal of focus on this issue of brain trauma. We've been through a great deal of litigation on this issue and settled a major case on concussion, so we'll let the lawyers handle that and deal with it. Yes.
Roger, Ron Mott, NBC News.
I'm sorry, you guys, I can't see you.
Hi,
Yes.
Roger. Ron Mott, NBC News.
Yes.
When you talk about supporting your players, what form or forms will that take? Because some people reasonably presume that if players felt that this league were truly on their side and supporting them in these causes and these concerns, that they would not take a knee. So how is this going to manifest itself going forward? Is the league willing to put the shield on the line to get into some sticky political and social debates?
Okay, but we're not afraid of the tough conversations. That's what we're having with our players. That's what we had yesterday, to make sure we understand one another and understand where they're coming from. And I think out of those discussions, they understand that the owners and the NFL really do care about their issues and what we can do to make the communities better. And so I think that's what dialogue's all about, and listening and understanding, so that we can get that kind of understanding between different parties. And that's what is complex about this, but that's why it's also really important to do, because I think that's where real change really happens, and that's the opportunity for us in our communities. We've had discussions with them for over a year, and I think we have a very good understanding of the types of things that they're interested in, how they can get support from the NFL to do that, and we want to do that. And that could be in legislative matters, that can be in the community with, can we participate in ride-alongs and try to make sure we understand what's going on in different communities across the nation. Because the problems in one market are different than the problems in another market. And so that involves the clubs and the players getting together and making sure we truly understand what's going on in those markets. And that's where we see a real impact.
All right. Roger Connell, McShane with the Fox Business Network, and I do want to ask you a business-related question to the league. One of the things we've seen in the polling this week, Gallup had numbers that showed the popularity of pro football started to come down, but they also show there's a big political divide, whereas Republicans identifying as pro football fans down 15%, Democrats only 3%. So it doesn't directly speak to the Anthem protests, but what's your reaction to those numbers, and what, if any, steps can be taken to reverse that trend?
Well, we believe doing the right thing is what you ultimately have to do. And I think listening to our players, understanding our players, trying to address those underlying issues, and making our communities better is where the real opportunity is. And that long term is going to benefit us. And so that's what our focus is, and that's how we're going to deal with it.
What about that split, though? That split between the parties, the political.
I don't think that surprises anybody. What we're trying to do is stay out of politics. We're not looking to get into politics. What we're looking to do is continue to keep people focused on football.
Commissioner, you
so
said,
people come.
Commissioner, you've been talking about. You just said.
Yes. Ma'am, just a second.
Thank you, Commissioner. As you said, you've been in discussions now for over a year. More discussions over the past day and a half or so. Realistically, can you tell us and tell the American people how closer you are today to resolving this?
Well, I think the fact is that we have about a half a dozen players that are protesting. We hope, and we're going to continue to work to try to put that at zero. That's what we'd like to do. But we want to make sure that we're understanding what the players are talking about, and that's complex. And we've taken the time, I personally have taken the time to go on those ride-alongs and to go and figure out what are the things in our communities that our players are expressing. And our clubs have a much better understanding of that from the meetings over the last several weeks, to hear directly from those players and do the tough work to try to understand what is it we need to accomplish together. And that's what I think is really the opportunity and what's really happening. So, yes, Judy, I see that. I can't hear you, Judy. I'm sorry.
Roger, the owners with an understanding that teams that have indicated they would discipline their own players for not standing will not discipline them.
No, we didn't discuss that. It wasn't necessary. We had a real focus on making sure that all of our teams understood the kind of dialogue that took place, the kind of things we're interested in getting support from them. And there was complete support for the NFL, each club supporting their players, and continuing the dialogue that they've had on the club level. I would tell you there's unprecedented conversations and dialogue going on between our players, between our owners, between our club officials, between the league. And that is a really positive change for us, and we think ultimately is going to pay dividends.
Commissioner, you've talked a lot about having productive meetings with the players. You personally, do you understand what they're protesting, and can you explain your understanding of that?
Yes, they're very clear about it, and they're actually incredibly knowledgeable, articulate, and they spent the time to go into the communities and talk about that. And so they really, truly understand it. They're talking about criminal justice reform, whether it's bail reform, whether it's talking about sentencing, mandatory sentencing. They're talking about changes that I think will make our communities better, that there is bipartisan support for across our nation and that need focus. They're talking about what we can do to support them to effectuate that legislative change. And that's, again, very, very positive. They're talking about equality issues, making sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to give people an opportunity, whether it's in education or economic, and what we can do to try to effectuate that. And we believe with the players that we can help them, we can support them, and those are our issues, national issues, American issues that are all important to deal with.
Was there
Roger.
Last question.
Roger, hey, two-part question here. Number one, have you communicated?
Taking two questions?
Do you mind? Have you at all communicated with President Trump? Do you have any plans to communicate with President Trump? Second question is a football question. Pace of play. How happy are you with just the fact that it seems like the games are going quicker this year?
Yeah, I have not. To your first question, to the second question, we're very pleased with the pace of game changes. We've seen, in particular, what I call the double ups, and that bother me so much on the commercial format. We've seen, I think it's close to a 90% reduction in that this year, which I think is good for our fans. I think it's good for the experience of watching an NFL game, whether you're in the stadium or on television or on another platform. And we said all along, this wasn't about reducing the length of games, it was the pace of the game. And so the 40-second clocks, as an example, that we put in after the point after touchdown and after the touchdowns have had a real impact. Centralizing replay and bringing the Surface tablet to the sideline so the official can do it. All of that's sped up what we consider downtime, time that's not we don't believe is attractive to our fans. So we're happy with it. It's only 6 weeks. We've got a long ways to go, but we're continuing to see what we can do to keep pushing that, because we believe that's good for the experience.
Okay.
Thank you.
NFL Commissioner taking to the podium after 2 days of conversations about all sorts of issues, but mainly, of course, this issue and the controversy surrounding whether the players are going to be standing for the national anthem and if there would be any discipline if they did not. So joining me now is Martha McCallum, Fox News anchor and host of The Story. And I'm glad that you're here because we were able to watch that and say, he's in a tough position. He didn't have a lot new to say. He said, we want the players to stand. We know that our fans expect them to stand. But what I took away from that is that he doesn't plan to do anything different.
I don't think that Roger Goodell is going to make a lot of people on the side who want these players to stand happy with this answer. There are rules on the books that say that they need to stand. Obviously, those have been disregarded. And he is basically, sort of splitting this in half here. He's saying, we're trying to talk to them. We're trying to come up with community-based things that they can do. And you know what? That would be great. I mean, there is a lot that these NFL players could do in their communities. I was just watching Burgess Owen, who's been an amazing voice on this for football, saying, look, you've got 60% of young boys in California who can't pass the medium level for reading and writing. You have a huge incarceration rate. That is something that needs to be discussed in this country. So what about taking this anger and pouring it into some of those areas where these guys could actually make a difference?
And actually, the NFL came out yesterday and said that they would support those efforts. And I actually feel like President Trump, he could really drive this home because you have people from both sides of the aisle saying, especially on bail reform in particular and this criminal justice reform package, the hitch might be Senator Sessions or Attorney General Sessions on whether he would go along with it. But I think if President Trump said to, then he would. Roger Goodell also said we're trying to stay out of politics. But at this point, is it impossible to stay out of politics?
To which, when you and I were watching that, I said, good luck.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they are deeply into politics. And you know what? I think what we all know is that politics has permeated almost every part of our lives. Friendships, neighborhoods, where people live, all of it. And it is really sad. I do think, I had Nate Boyer on the other night, former Green Beret and NFL player, and he said he would love to see Colin Kaepernick and President Trump come together and actually have a meeting on this. And, I think those things sort of take on a tint of that they're for show. You think of the beer summit, which, ended up in some ways being, sort of, I don't know, maybe a fanciful, interesting exercise and not much more. But wouldn't it be interesting to see those two people sit down together and say, what are your grievances? Let's work this out. We really want all of you guys to stand for the anthem. And you pointed out what Condoleezza Rice said, which was so to the point.
She was great. So when she was on, I had her on the show in Dallas last week, and I asked her thoughts, and she said, because she loves the game and she loves her country, and she said that she believes standing is the right thing to do, not because the country is perfect, but you stand in unison because it is imperfect, and we can continue to work on it together going forward. So I wish that she would have had a chance.
Create a more perfect union, right? That's the goal of the country.
Well, and I do think that there are things happening on these issues. For example, in Denver, Colorado, I know one of the players had got together, figured out a way to work with all the police chiefs in the different counties. There are things to be done. At this point, do you think the players have alienated so many of their fans that they don't have a way back?
I don't think so. I think in this country, everybody wants to love football, and they don't want to have a reason to turn this off. And I think that if they see that kind of real action, I think there'd be a tremendous amount of support for it. But I think it needs to be, the other interesting thing that Roger Goodell said is, you've got about a half a dozen players that are kneeling right now. So what I found last night, looking at all the players who were at this meeting yesterday, we did an analysis of what they've done over the course of all these last games. Many of them had knelt at one point and are standing now. So I feel like this issue is moving towards a positive resolution, and I do think that Americans are very forgiving and open, and I think they'd love to see this move in a positive direction that would allow everybody to get the politics out of football and have these guys make a positive change in their communities.
Yeah, nobody wants like a black cloud over one of America's favorite pastimes on Sundays. But there certainly has been. Do you think President Trump will be satisfied with what he just heard?
I don't. I mean, I think he's made it pretty clear that the kind of leader that he is, and he gets a lot of heat for it, and he gets a lot of attention and love for it from the people who support him. He believes in putting your foot down and telling people what you expect of them. And he wants Roger Goodell to stand up there and say, if you don't stand at that game, sit in the locker room, or don't play at all, which Jerry Jones said. It is there's a lot more nuance to this issue that has taken on a life of its own.
Yes, and it's possible that we'll hear more coming out of that meeting that he wasn't able to say publicly at the podium. Perhaps we'll get some leaks.
Wouldn't you love to have been a fly on the wall at that meeting? I would love to hear the voices of this debate really played out between the players and the coaches. I mean, the players and the owners. I think it would be fascinating.
I agree. All right. So we enjoyed having you here.
Thanks, Dana. Great to see you.
McCallum. And what do we have next? Oh, we have Capitol Hill next. President Trump meeting with members of the Senate Finance Committee while he pushes ahead on tax reform. And some Democrats already coming out against the plan in a news conference earlier today. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel joins me now. Mike, let's start with breaking details on health care. Is this bipartisan bill that we heard about yesterday already in trouble?
Dana, it sounds like it is in trouble. A spokesman for House Speaker Paul Ryan is throwing cold water on it, saying, quote, the speaker does not see anything that changes his view that the Senate should keep its focus on repeal and replace of Obamacare. Senators Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray hammered out a 2-year deal to provide cost-sharing reduction funding for 2018 and 2019. But President Trump sounds concerned that may be an insurance industry bailout.
I won't do anything to enrich the insurance companies, because right now the insurance companies are being enriched. They've been enriched by Obamacare like nothing anybody's ever seen before.
The Senate is expected to vote likely tomorrow on a budget blueprint. It sounds like Republican leaders feel like they have the votes for it. If it gets approved, that would clear a path for tax reform.
With further instructions from this budget, the committee will be able to complete its work and report legislation that promotes economic growth, that helps keep more money in the pockets of hardworking men and women, and that closes special interest loopholes while preserving core middle-class incentives.
Top Democrats are already predicting that Republicans will struggle with addressing the tax code.
My prediction, just what happened with health care is going to happen with their tax bill. The American people learned over a period of months, in part through efforts of people like those standing here, how bad this bill was, and they turned against it. And then the Republicans couldn't pass it. Same thing is going to happen here.
But to recap, it sounds like Republican leaders feel like they have the votes for the budget blueprint sometime tomorrow, and so already the fight is shifting to tax reform. Dana?
All right, Mike Emanuel, thank you so much. I had Martha McCallum stay with us because there's all this breaking news, and so now you're held hostage in the studio. It's really important for the Republicans, if they can get this budget passed, that means that they can do that with 51 votes, which means they can go and try to do tax reform with 51 votes. Otherwise, they have to get 60. So this is a big deal if they can do the budget.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're going to vote either tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening, and it sounds like they have the vote for the budget, which, as you say, allows them to go through on 51 votes, which is huge because they're not going to get much more than that. We know how tight this vote is going to be. I think the fact that Thad Cochran is back is a plus, but you've also got some, people who are wavering on this tax cut bill. I think it's going to be pretty tough for them to, like health care, to go back to their constituents to explain why they didn't vote for a tax cut or something that is ostensibly going to put $4,000 back in the pocket of every American family, if indeed that turns out to be true.
Right.
So I think this is a tougher vote for many of them than health care in a way.
And then, of course, we have tax reform, and there was a little bit of news about that this morning. Secretary Mnuchin from the Treasury Department, he was on Politico Radio, and he made a pretty bold prediction. Listen.
Can we get a rock-solid guarantee on that? And what's the path to get this thing done by the end of the year?
Absolute guarantee. We expect that we'll get it to the president's desk by the beginning of December to be signed. I think to the extent we get the tax deal done, the stock market will go up higher, but there's no question in my mind if we don't get it done, you're going to see a reversal of a significant amount of these gains.
And that's true, Martha. I think that the stock market, you hear that from people that know about that issue, that the promise of tax reform is important. But it's interesting because President Trump didn't run as president to help Wall Street. He wanted to help Main Street. So they've got a little bit of a messaging issue there.
True. But I mean, when you look at Wall Street, you've got, a large percentage of the country, 75, 80, even higher perhaps, that are invested in stocks. You also have all of those companies that have actual earnings growth going on. I mean, the economic story is a very good one over the course of the past 10 months. And that's why I think you see a lot of positive optimism in the consumer confidence numbers and all of that. But he's absolutely right. If they can't pass